Hello and welcome back to the Game Room. You know what I love? Video games. You know what I love? Talking about games. And it seems like a lot of people these days who cover games seem to hate them. Or at least the people who play them. Well, that's not me. And that's not the 2036 of you beautiful people checking out this video here today. We are at another week at another new record. We have blown past current year subscribers and we are moving on into the future and hopefully never looking back. Now, following up on last week's video, I decided to take another dip into some of the hardest games I've ever played. However, the caveat this week being, I didn't really find these all that hard when I beat them. Yet, according to others or friends or even myself sometimes after the fact, they're actually pretty dang hard. So if that sounds interesting to you, let's check it out.
There's a lot of games out there, some of which you've never even heard of. That's where I come in. My name's Luke. I've been playing games since the age of 2, and I have no life.
This is my game room.
Alright, so yes, let me preface this again, which I know these games are difficult, but when I went through them, I did not find them all that tough. In fact, as I mentioned, sometimes I'll beat a game and then I'll try playing it again years later, whether it's a one from my childhood or whatnot, and I jump into it and it is so much harder than I remember. So I like to start off with this game because it's pretty much the poster child of this idea for me, and that is one of my all-time favorite games, probably my favorite NES game bar none, and that is Legend of Zelda 2: The Adventures of Link. And I absolutely love everything about this game. I love the style of the combat, the 2D kind of walking around, dungeon crawling, the music, everything. For me, this is my original Legend of Zelda. I do not care much for the original Legend of Zelda. I love Link to the Past. That's been my all-time favorite game forever. But Zelda 2 is really close behind it. And it's funny because for years I always preached the good book of Zelda 2, and then the more and more I hear about it, people say it's super hard, it's super hard, it's super hard. I never found it all that difficult. It's very easy to cheese. You can level up your character, max out your sword early on if you want, and then go from there. It really levels out the difficulty, in my opinion, because I feel like it's very hard if you go into it with the wrong strategy. And that's what I think about a lot of these games we're going to talk about, is you can make things easier on yourself instead of harder. And with Zelda 2 specifically, I've said this a million times, I'll say it again, the biggest reason why I think people think this game is hard is that after you beat the first palace, most people go straight to Death Mountain. That is not what you should do. You should go from the first palace to the second palace. And even better, you should spend about 10-20 minutes in the swamp just grinding Octoroks, getting your sword ability up. And here's another thing with Zelda 2, is that if you lose all your lives, you lose all your experience. However, you can level up, and when you lose all your lives, it also respawns every enemy within a palace. So you can kind of cheese your ability to level up, because if you know Zelda 2, when you finish a palace, you automatically get enough experience to get to your next upgrade. So what you can do is get into a palace, use all your experience on an upgrade, kill yourself, walk back there, kill all the enemies again, get more experience, level up, and then get to the end of the level, put the crystal in, level up. So yeah, this is one of those things where sure, I know all the strategies, but I've also been doing this since before I could remember. So it's one of those things where it's impossible for me to divorce the difference between it being difficult and it not be, which is the same thing I think happens to a lot of people with Zelda 1, because Zelda 1 is so ingrained in these people's minds that they can't understand how you don't know to go burn that random bush on screen 48 that's 3 things in, and that's where you get the secret, this and that. Oh, and you got to get the ring that you can buy and then equip it, but it doesn't say anything. See what I mean? So that's what I'm getting at. But Zelda 2, I don't find it all that hard, but I know a lot of people say it's incredibly difficult. Just trust me when I say, go to Palace 2, grind the Octoroks, you'll be great. It's a wonderful game too. Alright, so here's the next one. So I played this a few years ago when I did an action month, and I remember people saying this game was, I don't know if it's necessarily hard as much as it was broken, but I put it in, and, you know, at first I thought this was really hard, and then after, like, maybe 2 or 3 attempts, I'm like, oh, actually, this is pretty simple. And that game is Die Hard on the NES. And, you know, it's funny, I know it's not a great game, but also, especially at that time when you get so overburdened with how many first-person shooters you're playing and how many light RPG element type mechanics are in games. Sometimes when you get something so simple as this, where you literally walk around a building shooting people, there's certain timed events that go off, and if you're a fan of the movie, it even makes it even more enjoyable. I really like this. I didn't find it all that hard. I was able to beat it in, I want to say, a day of actual attempts. The biggest the biggest challenge of the game was not falling through a damn window and wanting it to follow the story of the movie more than it actually did, because you kill about 100 terrorists instead of 12. But still, really fun game, and one of those ones where I'm give it a shot. You know, don't buy it. It's way too expensive now. I think I got it when it was still under 100, and now it's well over that, I believe. But one I'm glad to have in the collection, and one that really was not as hard as I was expecting it to be. Now, this is one that I will say the last boss is pretty damn tough, but everything up to that was very doable and not that hard in my opinion. Now, once again, let me preface, I am not some gaming god, but I like to think I am a jack of all trades with games, and I have a mentality where I'm good at trial and error, and I'm not going to give up on something. And so a lot of these games really feed into that. So as long as you keep throwing your head against that wall, you'll eventually get through it. And the game I'm talking about is the original Castlevania. So I went through and I played all the original Mega Mans, and I just wasn't the biggest fan of them. So going into Castlevania, I was wondering if I would have a similar experience. Could not have been more wrong. I've played all three of the original Castlevanias now. I really enjoy all three of them for different reasons. Never been able to beat the third one, but I have beat the first two, and beating the first Castlevania was such a fun experience. Getting to the final boss of Dracula is tough. I will say he is a tough boss, especially if you don't know there's a second form, which is why I did a whole Noob Gamer where I had Jen try and get to that second form, which led to some great moments for the channel.
Oh, I'm making stupid faces while I'm playing. I can feel my... I'm making such... God, they're so stupid. I can just see myself... Like I look like a fish trying to breathe out of water.
But all in all, I did not find the experience all that tough. The Medusa heads weren't that annoying. The platforming wasn't that bad. Now, bear in mind, I played Castlevania 1 after I had attempted Castlevania 3. So maybe that was part of it, is that I went to a game that was easier. But yeah, not nearly as hard as I was expecting, but a really fun time. Now, here's one that for years I've heard is really tough, especially lately when people say they get stuck in it. Now, I know there is a potential to get hard stuck at times, but I just remember having such a blast playing this game that the only thing I thought about was, wow, I can't believe I got to keep playing this, and that is Final Fantasy Tactics. So I did not find this game hard at all. Even with the obtuse biorhythms and the different dates and the, you know, how the calculator works and the bard works, finding all the secret classes, I didn't find it that tough. Now, I did find the Weirgraph fight almost broke me, but it didn't. I managed to get through him. But just a phenomenal game, start to finish, and really something that goes up my wheelhouse, because I'm very good at looking at something and strategizing a new attempt and strategizing a new attempt instead of just running your head over and over and over again. But I'd say to anyone, if you think Final Fantasy Tactics is too tough, try it with a different squad. Try taking your time, level up your characters a little bit. You know, maybe lean on some of the other characters like Orlandu instead of building up your own squad. Like, there's a lot of different ways of getting through this game, and all of them are fun, great, super enjoyable. And I can't say enough nice things about that game. Hopefully one of these days we get a remake, but I think that's getting less and less. Or if they make it a good one, it'd be less and less, because I remember when they made the sequels, they added the stupid judge system. I was not that excited to play them, and I still haven't to this day. Okay, so here's a game that they supposedly was so hard, they put in a lot of microtransactions that forced you to utilize them to make the game easier, and that was Middle-earth's Shadow of War, the sequel to Shadows of Mordor. Now, I famously really enjoyed this game. I put in about 50 hours. The way it works is that you can, with the Nemesis system, in this game, you can start dominating the various different villains and having them be part of your squad, and then you can assign them to the different towers you take over. And what makes the game so tough is that eventually the game starts leveling up unfairly against you to where your squad members can't keep up with the enemy squad nemesises that keep coming at you. But I don't know if I figured out a cheese method or if I was just really good at not caring or gaming the system, or maybe because I put so much time into it. But I was able to get all the way through the convoluted ending where you have to defend your base 10 times, something insane like that. I constantly would take over the new enemies, dominate them, make them my guys, send them off. Like, it definitely wasn't nearly as fun as Shadows of Mordor because of this, but I didn't find it that hard. It was more tedious. And, I don't really find tedium all that hard. Sometimes I enjoy tedium because it allows me to play a podcast or watch a television show while I'm playing. Generally, I'm listening to something rather than watching them these days. But yeah, that was Shadow of War, and I always like to mention that one because I remember everyone saying how you needed to use the microtransactions in order to get through it, which that was not the case. So, what are you going to do? All right, now here's one. Now, the base game of this is incredibly difficult, but when they announced the DLC, I expected it to be harder. Now, maybe it's because I had so much familiarity with it that I just blew through it, but XCOM 2 War of the Chosen, so not 2, War of the Chosen, the DLC expansion, where they add these 3 super aliens that come in and hunt you, Predator style. I didn't find all that tough. I really didn't. I kind of blew through it. I found it far easier than my original playthrough of XCOM 2 on the PC. I played the War of the Chosen on the PS4. Did this back in 2018. I really enjoyed revisiting the game, but it's funny. I just didn't find the super soldiers all that intimidating when you got all of the new abilities to help mitigate them. And it seemed like a wash, and I expected it to be a lot harder. And maybe it's just one of those things where it's just because it's in my wheelhouse. All right, now I don't have a physical copy of this game. I've almost picked it up a few times. Originally, it was only a download game on the Xbox One, and that is Cuphead. Cuphead is a very difficult game, so I've been told, but I don't know. It was right after I played Fury, and maybe I just had it in my bones to go after these really quote-unquote tough boss rush mode type games, but I blew through Cuphead in about a week and really didn't have any hard stops. Now, I haven't played the DLC since then, but still, the King Dice fight, the Devil fight, they were fun. That's what I mean, is I found the whole thing fun. I didn't find it frustrating, and I didn't find it hard. And from what I've talked to from other people, they just can't get through it. It's a tough game. It's on all these lists, and I didn't see it at all. So Cuphead, phenomenal game. Take a look at it. Check it out. You may not think it's as hard as people say too. All right, so another one for the PS5. Now, I originally played this on the PC. This actually was the last game I ever played with my friend Sean before he unfortunately passed. We played it a few times via Steam, and it's a video game version of a board game we played a lot, and that was Gloomhaven, and this is called the Mercenaries Edition. Now, the reason why I don't find this hard is probably a little bit of a cheat, because I have played hundreds of hours of the board game, and what's funny is playing the video game version of Gloomhaven helped show that the way my friend and I were playing it was wrong, where we were expending reagents after just one battle. So if we bought a potion, the potion went away. That's not how it works. Apparently that potion sticks with your character, so that makes sense why we were always strapped for gold. And with these things, with these very convoluted, complicated board games, it's super easy to misinterpret the rules. But playing it on when PC was a hell of a good time. Now, it is tough. Don't get me wrong, it is tough, but if you have the background of the board game, I was able to get in there with my Mind Thief, do stuff around, get farther in the game, and also you can control multiple characters, which was cool, because then you could run a whole squad simultaneously, which I guess you could have done in the board game. I just never thought of doing. But I got fairly far in that game, and then Elden Ring came out and kind of took over my life, and then after that, Triangle Strategy, and then I never really went back to Gloomhaven. I picked it up on the PS5 to try and give it a shot someday, but a very, very fun game. If you've played the board game, you will really like the video game, especially because it does not require the hour of setup and teardown and the little special wooden boxes you have to buy aftermarket and glue together to keep the thing all nice and organized. Because if you've ever seen the Gloomhaven board game, there's like a couple thousand cards, there's so many tokens and pieces. and just having it all be wrapped into a game. It's kind of like when Monopoly or Risk first came out, the video game versions, where it was like, oh, this is cool. But the thing about Gloomhaven, the board game, is it's basically set up like a tactical RPG. So it really does have mechanics that translate to a video game so much better, in my opinion. And I really enjoyed that game. And I think if you guys or have ever had any inkling in playing the board game, check out the video game. It's a great way to train you on that. Okay, now here's another one. So this originally was going to be either the second or third game I ever covered on the channel. One like I mentioned last week about Risk of Rain. Another game my buddy Ryan and I wanted to cover was a game called Sky Blazer. So I went through and I beat this game. We recorded the footage. Now you notice I have it CIB, but the front's all destroyed looking because I got it for a steal. Basically, I paid cart only price for it with the box and manual. And it's a pretty dang tough Super Nintendo game. You don't really hear much about it. It was made by Sony ImageSoft, and you play as a winged Kid Icarus looking guy. You go through all these different levels, and it has sort of a mini map, kind of like Joe and Mac or Super Mario World, where you get to the stages, and then of course there's theme stages. But the boss fights can get pretty tough. But I don't know what it is. It just clicked with me. You know, I found it hard at first, and then I just kind of just steamrolled through the thing. I remember going through the night that we played it, where I just beat it in one sitting, and my friend was just looking at me aghast, be like, "Wow, how'd you get so good at this?" I mean, I even got to the secret ship level, which is like a little hidden bonus, which I can't remember what the point of that was. But yeah, solid game. Not nearly as hard as I was expecting. Unfortunately, it has become a lot more collectible these days. And, maybe one of these days I'll get a box for it that isn't so trash. All right, moving on. So this was a game that came out. It was my game of the year, I want to say in 2020 or 2021. I can't remember. The COVID years kind of meld together. I think it was 2021. And it was the first game in this series I ever picked up at launch and I ever finished, as soon as I got it. That was the 2D version. Now, I played Metroid Prime before, but Metroid Dread. I was expecting this to be so much harder, and I've talked to other people who've played it who say it's insanely difficult. And the whole Eevee thing's chasing you, I didn't find it all that tough. I thought they were easy enough to avoid. There was certain rule sets you could manage to listen to. And if you did die, it immediately set you back up right where you died within that area. So as far as games go, like I'm used to playing, Dark Souls types things or Hollow Knight or, things of that nature where you have to go all the way back. And you mean you're going to give me something that's kind of akin to Super Meat Boy where you can start 10 seconds behind where you died? This isn't very tough at all. And the boss fights didn't find all that hard either. And really I found it to be a very enjoyable game. It was my game of the year it came out. So that was just one of those fun ones where it's interesting to hear everyone's perspective and say, oh, that's a very hard game, when it's like, was it? I guess it was. All right, and then last game on the Switch is another one I played on Steam. It's funny, I have a lot of Steam representation this video, and that is Rogue Legacy. So this was the first ever game that I played that was really heavily roguelike. Now, other than something like Toe Jam and Earl, Rogue Legacy really introduced me to this kind of genre. After this one, I then ended up playing games like Spelunky, games like Dead Cells, games like Hades, and the like of that. But it all started with Rogue Legacy, which was a very cool game. It's actually the reason I even found out about Indie Box, is because I wanted to get it physically. And they were the only ones who made it at the time. And then that's why eventually I picked up the Switch one, because I was never able to find that one. Anyways, you start into a randomized castle. It's very Castlevania inspired, and each one of your characters will have personality traits. And they can be traits that are good, or they can be traits that are bad, or just ones that are random. Ones that make it so that the color scales go away, or that your character is flatulent, or that your character takes more damage, or does more damage, or it's kind of, that's kind of the fun part about it, is that every go round you're a little bit different. So the innate abilities of your they call them heirs, because your heir dies in there, then the castle resets, and then someone else goes in there, and you retain some of your gold. You can use the gold to buy upgrades for yourself, and then continue on through the castle. And it's a really fun gameplay loop, one that I really enjoy, as I've played it 3 or 4 times since then, and still continue to enjoy it. So, very fun game, but one I did not find all that difficult. Go figure. Now, here's one, these last couple ones actually, I didn't find it that hard when I played it, but I have tried playing it years later, and I found it insanely hard, and I don't know what I was on or if I was using cheat codes or what, but the first one we're going to talk about is Indiana Jones' Greatest Adventures on the SNES. So this, if you know the Super Star Wars series, this is the Indiana Jones version of those games. It is tough. Like, I remember getting through this game, beating this game, at least I think I do, unless I'm misremembering it, and thinking it was all right. It was a decent game, but I really didn't find it all that challenging. I had to have used codes or something. There's just no way, because I tried playing this a few years ago, and I just got my ass handed to me. I could not even get past the first stage, and I was just, what happened? How usually when I play games after years, kind of like Zelda 2, every 5-6 years I would go back to it, and I would get better, and it would really give me a nice ego boost. Going back to Indiana Jones, it was the exact opposite. I'm like, what happened? How did I suddenly suck at this game? That's the point where now I'm not quite sure. Am I remembering it correctly? Did I even beat the game? Am I false memorizing this? Am I combining it with me actually watching the movie? That doesn't make sense. It is way too damn hard. But I remember beating it and thinking that the game was just kind of like, all right, yeah, another SNES game. Kind of like Judge Dredd, where I beat it, and I look back at it now, and I'm like, how did I beat that thing? But what are you going to do? That's just how it is when you're a kid with a game you bought, and you got to play it. All right, and then down to the last two. So this is another one that I played on the Wii shortly after I played the first game in the series I ever played, and that was Fire Emblem Radiant Dawn. So I played Path of Radiance, loved it. I did not have a Wii, but my roommate in college did, and this game came out, and I was very much the guy who's like, hey man, you should check out that Fire Emblem game. You know, the first one was amazing. You should really pick that up. And so he did, and I was probably the only one who played it. I don't know if he enjoyed it. And I played it on normal mode, so I didn't play it on the hard difficulty. But years later, I found out that everyone says this game is incredibly difficult. That basically the normal mode is the hard mode, and then the hard mode is kind of insane. And I do remember a few times playing through this that it did feel a little tough at times. Maybe because I had used my save data from the first game, maybe it kind of helped bolster some of the stats of the repeat characters. But I enjoyed it. You know what's funny? I think I'm great. I think I judged this game too harshly. If I went back and played it now, I probably would like it more. But the reason I bring it up is because I beat it. I beat the game, other than the last mission, which all Fire Emblem last missions are always pretty tough. I didn't lose anyone. I managed to get through it fairly easily. It was a game where it bounces around from different protagonists in each chapter, so I was unfamiliar with a Fire Emblem doing that. Lo and behold, I guess a lot of them do that. So that's kind of why I wasn't that crazy about it, is I really liked Ike and the Grail Mercenaries, and you don't even get to Ike until deep in the game. Let's say like 2/3 or at least halfway through. But I tried playing it again when I picked it up, I want to say in 2013, 2014, when I finally got a Wii to play it on. And I tried playing the first couple of missions, and I think I started on hard mode, and I got my ass kicked. So then I put it on normal mode, and I still was getting my ass kicked. And I was just, what is happening here? Oh my God, how did I... And it just was insanely difficult. And I don't know if it's because I was not trying to lean on the overpowered character you get, which is a Fire Emblem trope where when you start the game, one of your characters is always actually promoted, and you don't know it until later in the game, but you gotta be careful not to use the promoted unit, because that'll leech all the experience, and then your other characters are gonna be under-leveled as you go forward. Little inside baseball there with how Fire Emblems work. But yeah, I got my ass kicked, and I just thought back, and I'm like, wow, okay, so that's why everyone says this game is hard. I guess it is. I guess it is. All right, last game we're going to talk about is one that you probably won't be expecting. It's not a game that came out in America, but I always like to bring this game up as often as I can, and that is Treasure of the Rudras, or known as Rudra no Hiho in Japanese. And this is a Squaresoft game. It is actually the game that is directly sandwiched between Final Fantasy VI and Final Fantasy VII. And if you like those games, you will like this game, because it definitely not only holds a candle to those games, but it can stand shoulder to shoulder with them. What makes it difficult, at least what I was told by my buddy Ryan, he's the one who introduced me to it, he said it was tough because you have to go through the same game, not the same, but you go through the game 3 different times with 3 different main characters. And what's cool about it is each main character affects the stories in the other main characters. And you can go through and beat it as one main character and then start the second and the third. Or I've heard, allegedly, you can play all three stories simultaneously. Now, I don't have confirmation if that's true. I've seen, because I always like to look at other YouTubers' videos on this game, and I saw one person mention that, but that's not been the case for me, so I don't know if that's true or not. But definitely, once you beat all three scenarios, you unlock a fourth scenario, and then you get to the end of the game. And I would say the first scenario was very tough. Getting to the last boss in the first scenario, I was kind of white-knuckling it, but by that point, I had learned enough spells, and the way the magic system works in this game is that you actually build a spell book based on words of power, so that once you get to the end of the game, you'll have end-game spells that you can start the second and the third scenario with those end-game spells if you have the magic to use it, because bear in mind they use a lot more mana, but you can have the lower versions of it, so it's a lot easier going through it. So whereas the first playthrough of the scenario will take you, 20 hours, I was able to get the second and third playthrough scenarios down to like 10 hours each. And that's because I was so much more effective at grinding. And it's just a phenomenal game. Very good music. Very underrated. One of the ones along, like when Live Alive came out, I was so excited because that meant that there was a chance that this one could get that same treatment. And I'm hoping that'll happen someday so that I won't be one of the few people who know what a treat Treasure of the Rudras is. And there you go. There are a bunch of games that I have beaten that I did not find all that difficult, even though the larger gaming community says they are very tough. So let me know if you agree with me on these. Let me know if you think that I'm dead wrong. Maybe my gaming prowess is just more mightier than I'm aware. But yeah, that's what you get for this week, guys. As a reminder, I release a new video every Tuesday. Thank you all so much for being here. Thank you all so much for checking out the videos, commenting. I'm seeing some of you guys go back into the backlog of my catalog and seeing my old videos. Thank you. We're like 170 watch hours away from monetization. That's wild, man. I can't believe that I'm that close. I'm that close to being able to finally cash in on that $20 that's been sitting in my YouTube account since I lost monetization back in 2018. Oh, actually, that one's probably gone now. Knowing YouTube, that's gone. But hey, whatever. We're having fun. We're talking. I'm so happy all of you guys are here. And as always, it's been so nice getting a hold of you. Take care.